post Top Gun. It's decision time again. So I'm sitting there, and we had a crew that came through the course, and they were nurse, but they were also airline pilots. And of course, we drank at the bar with them and stuff. And I'm sitting there going, let me get this straight. You're flying for the airlines. You have, X number of days off a year. You can go fly fighters, and you're making 3 to 4 times what I'm making. And I'm busting my ass here. So, I'm sitting there going, what do I want to do? Do I want to stay in or get out and blah, blah, blah. And after one of these guys came through, it was like, it's a no-brainer. Now, I probably would not have gotten out post Top Gun if I couldn't have continued to fly fighters. It was that much a part of my life, and tough decision. I had already extended twice to help the squadron out because, you get loan guys from time to time, instructors, and I extended twice and to put me through the end of 85. And I was contemplating, man, if I could just extend to go fly the F-16 in. I knew they were coming, but it was just going to take too long, So I decided to get out. Before I got out of Top Gun, I took an A-4 down on several occasions and went down to fly against the Kunas. I knew a lot of those guys. And like I told you earlier, my goal was never to be an admiral. The Navy wants that to be your goal if you're going to stay in. I'm sure it's a general for the Air Force. And I just wanted to fly jets, man. I was just having a blast. I just wanted to fly as many platforms as I could. And getting out was going to allow me to provide for my family, fly with the airlines, and I could still fly fighters. So it became an easy decision. The tough decision was I talked to the Kunas guys, and Sam DeGeneres eventually became a general. I think he was the OPSO at the time. Was from my hometown, family friend, and I knew him. I knew some of the flight leads, and, I had a pretty good shot at getting it. And I'll tell you the story why I think that or know that. I was torn. I'm sitting there going, do I want to jump ship and go to the Air Force? And I know you did, and you can talk to that here in a second because you went the opposite way. But I'm sitting there. I really like the F-15. Man, I love the If I was going to go to war back in that time frame, that's the jet I would have wanted to go in, the F-15, because of the radar suite, the raw suite on board. They design tactics. They get, lit up somewhere, and they actually could tell, oh, it's coming from over here. I've seen guys pointing at me before I got lit up, The F-14 had so many bumps and nodules and all this stuff. It was a terrible raw system, and we didn't get to train with it that much, So there's no way we could design tactics in the F-14 the way the F-15 did off their raw system. But I remember being at the squadron the weekend before at the Kunas, and they had gotten rid of the F-4s, which I had fought. I mean, this is the exact timing. I'd gone there 2 months before, fought them in F-4s, and they were gone. They were, it was their first arrival in F-15s. It might have been 3 or 4 months later, but they were coming back, and they came in the break, and I'm looking, and they're just coming in so slow. It's like, what are they doing? And come to find out, they couldn't exceed whatever speed it was, and they couldn't come in dissimilar. Now, dissimilar in the Air Force, meant if one had a drop tank and the other one didn't. And look, I love the Air Force. I'm just saying that the rules are a little different between the Navy and the Air Force.
That's true.
But if they were dissimilar, they couldn't come in the break together. And man, I tell you what, I tend to push the envelope on it. You've seen some of the stuff that I sent you, but I love to push the envelope on the airplane. Every airplane that I've been in, every tactical jet, the first thing I do is take it up and just go straight up until zero airspeed, because I wanted to see how I was going to depart and what it felt like, and what I didn't want to be there. The first time you get there, I didn't want somebody on my ass trying to shoot me. I wanted to experience what it was going to be like before, and I did that not just in that arena, but low, slow, fast, and everything. Tried to explore the whole envelope of the airplane. But anyway, I called. I was torn because the Navy, on the other hand, I had a good in with the F-202, and they were going to train me in the F-4. And man, I always want, I go think back. God, I always want to fly the F-4, but of course, now I had a lot more experience, from I had in a training command. I'm sitting there with years of experience and then 3 years as a Top Gun instructor. And I'm going, man, the F-4 is really not that good an airplane today. But I called Rat Willard and talked to him. Rat's one of my heroes. And we were in VF2 together and eventually got the Top Gun together. He was in the movie. He's the guy, the Russian. He had blonde hair, so that was Rat when you see that picture, that video. But Oregon, he said, I think I'd stay with the Navy. So I said, no, thanks, Rat. Thanks for the advice. I called Tex Spence, another good friend of mine. Same thing. I think you ought to stay with the Navy. So I think Friday, I called Rat and Tex on Saturday. I called Sammy Saturday night and said, Sammy, man, I appreciate, what you're doing for me and this and that. But I said, I think I'm going to stick with the Navy. And he said, Rick, we're having the board tomorrow just to pick you up. And I go, man, don't tell me that, man. That makes me feel worse, I mean, and I really wanted to fly the F-15, like I said, but I think I made the right decision. I got to fly the F-4, the A-7, and the F-18 in the reserves after that. So that was a pretty good career doing that. And I don't have any regrets.
The F-4, I mean, what was the mission? Like, were you a aggressor squadron, or were you guys like strategic reserves?
It was air to air. We were the reserves. You were too young. I think you were around then. You were too young to remember. You're probably just 5 years old or something. But we still had F-4s in the reserves. We eventually got F-14s in VF202. But I flew the F-4 for 2 years before we transitioned to the F-14.
Oh, so you actually got to fly the F-14 again.
Oh yeah. That's coming. But I got to fly the F-4, and the problem with that was, man, when you weren't an active duty airplane, parts, you couldn't find parts. I mean, in Dallas, we didn't have in Navy Dallas, we didn't have a simulator. And back then, this is probably all going to be foreign to you, but as a junior airline pilot, we had 3 blocks of days off, 3, 4, and 3, or 4, 3, and 3, beginning, middle, end of the month. Every block period of time off, I had to go to Dallas, because if you didn't fly the jet within 14 days, you lost your ACM qual. And if you lost your ACM qual, you had to go to San Diego or to Norfolk, to Oceana, and get in a simulator to get it back so you can go back and fly the jet. And there were weekends, man, when these time periods when we had 1 jet available. So we just cycle in and, we're doing ACM, but still kept our qual.
Been there. No, I've been there.
You did that.
Yeah. Hot pit, hot seat.
So, what's that?
Hot pit, hot seat.
Oh,
you guys
yeah,
ever do
exactly.
That? Were you hot pit, hot seat?
Yep. It was unbelievable, but that's what we did. I mean, you had to do that to stay current. So anyway, we did make the transition to the F-14. The commute, I mean, back then, to get a jump seat, I mean, my airline didn't have jump seats when I first got hired. Then they gave it to us, but the problem was I had to go to the chief pilot's secretary and say, look, I'd like to get the jump seat on this day, there and back. She'd write out a paper ticket, and I'd use that to get the jump seat. Just a hassle. Got better as time went on, obviously, with the computers coming online and stuff, but it was a hassle back then. And I remember the last 3 times I went to the reserves in Dallas, I had car trouble. It was just getting real hard. So I went into my skipper and I said, Skipper, if I have a silver bullet, I want to use it. I said, I want you to allow me to go talk to CAG, and I'm going to try to make the jump to the attack guys, the A-7 guys in New Orleans, which is, I was living in Houma, and you're a local boy in that area, it's right there.
Yeah,
I mean, it was
that's a double commute.
An hour drive. Yeah. And it was crazy. And Joe Ellis, big time, my skipper, who was also working for my airline, said, he said, Oregon, he said, you're screening to command here and blah, blah, blah. And I said, Skipper, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. But if you don't let me do it, I'm going to quit anyway. I hate being a quitter, but I couldn't do it anymore. I had a daughter that I had to have some sort of life with, and I was just on the go too damn much. And he approved it. Long story short, went into CAG. Same thing with CAG. CAG's there going, hey, Rick, you're in a fighter squadron, that's attack squadron, you're taking somebody's slot and this and that. I said, CAG, once again, if I have a silver bullet, I want to use it, because if you don't let me do it, I'm not going to be here. So you allow me, you know, you got to get permission. You can't just go and show up in New Orleans and start talking to him. So they approved it for me to go talk to the New Orleans guy. And I ended up getting picked up. So got to do that. And I told those guys, I said, I'll be coffee mess officer. I'll do whatever you want. I'm local. Unlike Dallas, those guys all commuted in. They had very few local guys because it was single seat. They could take a jet on the road, leave it, and another guy come and pick it up. You couldn't do that in the F-14. You had a reel you had to worry about. So we always had to RTB, always had to come back to Dallas. We didn't have that flexibility. So it was a lot of little things like that. But so I got to fly the A-7 for a couple of years, and I actually liked the A-7. Everything was up here. I mean, someone did some good human engineering, you know, on the instrument panel. And the only problem with it was that it was underpowered, way underpowered. So when you put a load on it, bombs, I remember the F-14 doing escorts. We'd have to weave behind them because they were so slow. Oh, wow. You know, and make yourself a target and all the bad stuff. But I actually enjoyed it. Did that from 89 to 90 with VA 204 at the time. And I knew way back when there was a rumor going around that they were going to transition to Hornets. And I wanted to fly the Hornet. So that was part of the reason I wanted to make the switch as well. But I didn't use a silver bullet because of that. I really would have, if they wouldn't have approved me to make the transfer or at least attempt it, I would have left Naval Aviation, you know, the reserves. But I'm glad it didn't happen. When 204 went from the A-7s to the F-18, we had to write up a pack. They did a board and just all the stuff you did for promotions and so on and so forth. And they picked up guys. It was a way for them to, guys weren't pulling their weight. As you well know, in the reserves, you have people who are workhorses. I call them thoroughbreds. And there are other people that just sit in the back and go by and go home, you know. So they got rid of a lot of those guys, and I did get picked up. I was the only fighter guy with the only Navy fighter guy. We had a Marine fighter pilot that was picked up, and everybody else was A-7s, and they brought in some Hornet guys. It's the only time in my career in the reserves that we did. It was painful. We did a full syllabus. We had a guy that was the officer in charge. I can't remember the TAR, and he wanted to do a full syllabus because he had A-7 guys going to afterburning F-18 aircraft, and but for me, I had flown afterburner aircraft, and just as an aside, I told you about flying the F-4. My training in the F-4, I did the open and closed book NATOPS. I took fly swatter. We went to, because the Navy wasn't training in the airplane anymore. We didn't have there were no simulators, nothing. The Marines had it. So as I told you, they said I was going to be the last guy. Never confirmed it. But I came back to Dallas and flew the jet. That was my training in the F-4. It's crazy. But once again, you've flown a jet, afterburner jet, that jet's a jet, go fly, and you'd hardly see that in the fleet. And that reminds me of another story I got to tell you. Andy Caputi, good friend, and I got to Top Gun together in '83, beginning of '83. We need to go to Luke because they're going to put us on the F-5. So we go to Luke, and we're in the course, and the Air Force guy sitting there teaching us, he goes, Navy guys, huh? I said, please tell me that you didn't fly the jet over. And we're like, well, yeah, how else are we going to get here? We actually flew the F-5 to go to get trained on the F-5. But it was just systems. Once again, the jet, you're a fighter pilot. Jump in the jet and go fly,
You'll figure it out. Yeah. Figure it out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we had done all the NATOPS on, well, not NATOPS in the Air Force, but we knew the systems, but we still wanted to go to Luke to see it, to see stuff work and operate, and how does this interact with that, Anyway, that takes us to the end of my career, because I knew I wasn't going to screen. I got commandered out. I knew once I left fighters, I was not going to go to the attack community and be the CRX. That ended a pretty good career. I ended up with over 16 years of fighter experience or Navy jet flying, and I'm really proud of that. I think we had discussed for a warrior, if you will, a fighter pilot, Fallon is where we train to deploy, and we bring the whole air wing in, and we do strikes, and we do everything that we're going to do real world. My last 6 tactical trips to Fallon were in 6 different jets. And I'm sure there's somebody that might do better than that, but I went. Awesome. It's crazy. I mean, I started thinking about it. I was in the F-5 and the A-4 at Top Gun. Then after that, F-4s, we did a Fallon trip, then F-14s, then A-7s, and then F-18s. And all of them were active, a unit that could potentially go into combat when we're doing our training over there, though the last few were in the reserves. So anyway, that was fun. It was a good career. We had talked about performance. I'm a performance guy, but
how'd you like the Hornet?
I like the Hornet. You want to get into that? Let me hold on a second. I have these cliff notes here. I said it. Sheets, and the Hornet is. It was a cosmic. The flight controls on it were incredible. I really liked the Hornet in that regard. The neat part about it was, I'm going to flash back to the F-14. The F-14 radar wasn't really made to be short set, and by short sets, I'm talking about 30 miles. It wasn't a true medium PRF radar, pulse repetition frequency. And because of that, you'd have short sets. And I mean, there were times, if you didn't have a good reel in the back, there were times I would see the guy and we never had him on radar, and that was so frustrating. It just wasn't made for that. You had to have a really good reel in the back operating the radar. And, but it wasn't set up for that. It was designed, it was an interceptor to intercept bombers coming in with the Phoenix weapon system or missile to take out the bombers if they come in to threaten the ship or the battle group. One thing about the F-14, it actually made you a better fighter pilot because you got a lot of the stuff just by listening and absorbing what was going on. Your wingman might have part of the picture. This guy you might have part of the picture, your Rio, and you piece it together and go, okay, this is what I've got. This is what I'm seeing. And I can't tell you how many times we go back to the playback on a tax range, and that's exactly the way it was. It made you a better fighter pilot. It really did. And so, I mean, but I did like the Hornet. I'm going to go through the A-4. I like the A-4. It's a 50s technology, but we would encourage everybody. We got to fly against F-15s and the Air Force guys coming in, of course, Navy guys. We would encourage them. If I was going to go against them 1v1 in the A-4, I'd go, I want you to turn with me. Turn with the A-4. You've heard about not taking the who out of it. That's what we're talking Top Gun. I wouldn't say I turn with me. We talk like, I want the F-15 to turn with the A-4 on the first engagement. I want to show you what he can do. Okay. And of course, F-15 guys, I think any pilot comes in, oh yeah, it's an A-4, and I'm telling you, I don't remember a time that the A-4 didn't eat them up, because we could do more with less. I could go in the vertical slower than he could. My turn radius was inside of his. I mean, it's just all the things as a fighter pilot that, okay, I don't want to do this with this guy. And it was just an incredible machine. Those slats helped out. Putting the flaps down, it helped out. Everything helped to make that airplane as good as it could be. To simulate, by the way, it simulated the MiG-17 is what we used the A-4 for. The F-5 simulated the MiG-21 at Top Gun. And but after that, it was like, okay, now fight it the way you're supposed to fight it. Beat them every time. The F-15 would beat the A-4. The F-14 would beat the A-4. If you fought them properly, and you can look at those curves we were talking about earlier, overlap, and you can see exactly how to beat that airplane and what you need to do. And we talk about rate fights, rate radius, and extension energy fights, and fly the best airplane possible. Whether I'm an F-14, F-18, airplanes that are better. I will never lose to the A-4. Should never lose. Will never lose, because I'm in a better airplane over here than the A-4. But that's the beauty of what we do, is that if you're not on your game, man, any given day, any given airplane, yeah, you might feel good about your stuff, but on any given day, you can lose, you know?
Yeah.
So that's a given. Love the F-5. If I could have any airplane, it would be the F-5. It was forgiving. After 20 hours, you felt like you were, you know, King Kong. The F-5 looked fast in a tail slide. You know what I mean? You could be sliding down like that. Everybody thinks, oh, man, he's doing 400 knots, you know? And it was an amazing airplane. Part of that, I'm sure, is because we had Northrop maintaining the aircraft, and they were always available. But it was just a really fun airplane to fly, and I enjoyed it. But once again, the F-14, the F-18, the F-15 should all beat the F-5 every time. Didn't happen all the time, but they're better airplanes than the F-5, you know. The F-14, I told you about that. Weapon system's not what I would have wanted. I really enjoyed the Hornet weapon system. The Phoenix at that time was one of the few launch and leave and get in a terminal phase and it could go active. So that was kind of nice, but the damn missile was 1,000 pounds. You know, they had the taken off Grumman would use this promo, and you had six Phoenix on the F-14 and, you know, shooting at this there, shooting that. That's 6,000 pounds. We couldn't take off the shit. We couldn't take off on the carrier with 6 F-14s. If we came back, we had no fuel to land. So we generally had 1 or 2 Phoenix on board because it was just too heavy, you know, and 1,000 pounds each. So that was kind of a no-brainer. F-14 underpowered radar, would have liked a true medium PRF. The A+ and the D had bigger engines. I had 7 engine stalls in the F-14A. 7 engine stalls from taking off on a rendezvous. I put the wings forward and put the probe out to pull it in on tanker engine. And the A-14 is asymmetric. It's not like the Hornet or the F-5 where I'll give you an F-5 story here in a second to explain that. I had one on a missile shoot. We're shooting a Phoenix. I was an alternate, but we're climbing, doing a Rotowski climb and climbing up and shooting at a Taylor Smith. I want to take the shot if it comes, the alternate gets to shoot. So I'm watching my lead continue on, and I'm sitting down there trying to relight, and it will not light until I got below, like I said, whatever the air start envelope was. Started up again, got back into the fight, but by that time I see the Phoenix come off, and I see it was a direct hit on the tailless missile, which is kind of cool. But anyway, the A+ and the D got the engine we should have had from the get-go. I don't want to badmouth Pratt & Whitney, but the TF-30, it did good in the F-111, did good in the A-7, but for the F-14, it was not a great engine. We lost a lot of airframes because of those engines. Just to give you some numbers, they built 712 F-14s over the life of the aircraft. The Iranians bought 80, although I don't think they had the problems in Iran, took our hostages. So I don't think they got all 80. I think they ended up at 78 or 79. So that was subtracted from that 712. And we lost over 140 of them. And a lot of those, by the time I'd gotten to the F-14, the RAG in 79, it was in 74. In 79, Jay Yakeley, instructor on the staff, became an admiral, good guy as well. I think he's the high-time F-14 guy. We went through every accident, and up to at that point in time, we had lost over 80 F-14s, and a lot of them were to engine problems. A lot of them. So anyway, that's my story there. The 110 was better. I did not get to fly the A+ or the D. You could work in the A. I mean, you know as well as I do, even though airplanes were superior, you can go out and beat them. And I've beaten F-15s, F-16. F-16, the way I'd go against an F-16 is get them on his limit, the AOA limiter and stuff. And I can remember fighting an F-16 and we're getting there like that, and all of a sudden the airplane just stopped. It was, it's like, he's on his limiter, and it just takes it away from him, and it's like, that's the way you beat or could beat an F-16. And once again, that's all studying. That's all looking at curves, because if you look at the curves, an F-16 and overlay it over an F-14A, man, there's not a lot of ways to beat them. There shouldn't be, you know, but the limiter was one. I was not an AOA guy, limiter kind of guy. I was a G limiter kind of guy, because in the Hornet with the G limiter, you could get up, and I'm going back to EM diagrams now. You could get up there at 6.5 Gs and ride that 6.5 G line, you know, decrease your airspeed, and it would hold. It would be consistent 6.5 Gs, and you're performing the airplane right where the limits, where it needs to be. Whereas if you didn't have that limiter, you might be at 6.5, 6.2, 6.5, 5, 3, you know, as you slow down. So, and that you no longer have that ruler anymore on judging the other guy's energy state. But the day I knew, I think I might know what I'm doing. Tom Otterbein was our skipper, and he came on board, and I was instructing him in the F5, and went up. First thing we did with every new guy on the staff was a performance demo. So we're sitting there, okay, let's go to burner. All right, okay, pull it up, and let's accelerate. Okay, let's knock it off. Do it again. I said, I don't know what happened there, Otter, blah, blah, blah. No, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. It was first time in the jet, you know, doing this stuff. And he goes, I don't know, I had it in burner, we're doing that. So we did it again, and he starts falling off. I'm going, no. I said, something's not right. I said, check 30 left, you know, you check over there, and I'm pulling behind him, and I go, light the burner. He lights the burners, and I go, you got a burner that's not working. And the F5, the indicators are here, right in front of the throttle. And I can understand somebody new to the jet not knowing that, or you know, not realizing. But so I knew before he knew from my airplane that he had a problem, and he didn't know because it's centerline thrust. So that was the day when I came back from that hop and went, man, I felt really good, because it's like, that's what I'm here for. That's why I'm supposed to be here. You know, that's the whole point of what we're doing. I need to be able to fly my airplane to its limits and do what it's supposed to do, and look at his and go, you know, if he's in a superior airplane and something's going on, I know something's wrong, you know. And anyway, it's all the stuff that we do. And it's like a master chess game for those who haven't flown fighters and go out there and perform against another individual, another aircraft. It's a master chess game. There is nothing like it. It's all about energy management, when to give, when to take, when to do this, when to go vertical, when not. I miss it. Miss it a lot. Anyway, I'm going to go back.
Me too.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Which would you take, the Tomcat or the Hornet in a fight?
Hornet, hands down. The Hornet. We can talk about the Hornet. The Hornet, I like the radar. I like the package on board. Control system, you know, at 30,000 feet, you do a turn and you 10 degrees rate. At sea level, it might give you different controls. I mean, you sit next to the Hornet and everything's moving. Flying formation on it's like, wow. When you take off on the cat shot, the rudders are tilted in, you know. You know that. And I'm preaching to the choir here. But I just like the Hornet's control system. But I'm going to continue on the F-4. The F-4 was archaic, but I'm so glad I got to fly it, man. The first time I started it up, I'm sitting there and the airplane's just shaking, and all I could think of was, this has got to be what an 18 or 18-wheeler on the interstate feels like, you know. And the next thing that came to mind was my first takeoff, sitting there afterburner, taking off, and you know, we get airborne, and the only thing I could think of was, there's no way in hell I would do a dirty roll right now. You know, the Blues and the T-Birds used to do a dirty roll takeoff. Of course, they were lighter, light bag of fuel and stuff, but it was like I just can't see that I would do that. I would have done a dirty roll on any other airplane, you know, on takeoff. But the F-4 was like, it's going to take a lot of practice to want to, you know, to get to do that. So it's not something that I wanted to do, but I'm glad I got to fly the airplane. So in the end of the day, it's not always performance. If I'm going to war, I want a good weapons suite. I want a good raw gear suite. I want a good weapons platform. But I don't necessarily need the best, meanest, baddest performing airplane on the block. And I think we alluded to that with the F-35 and the F-22. So back in the day, I actually probably would have preferred the F-15, because I saw what they could do with their raw gear. It was incredible. Today, I take the Hornet. Of course, I'm looking at the F-22 and the F-35. The F-35 just seems to have a lot of neat stuff with it, the state-of-the-art technology, and I think that I certainly would like to fly either one of those airplanes.